customer service, done right, can be your company's single biggest competitive advantage. Welcome to the Customer Service Revolution. Join customer service authority and best-selling author John DiJulius as he interviews leaders who are revolutionizing their industries. This is more than a podcast, though. It's a movement. The Customer Service Revolution is a radical overthrow of conventional business mentality designed to transform what customers and employees experience. If you're a revolutionary customer service leader who's ready to stop competing on price and obsessed with building a brand that people cannot live without, this podcast is for you.
Hi, I'm Denise Thompson, managing partner of the DiJulius Group, and I'd like to welcome you to the Customer Service Revolution podcast with John DiJulius. In this week's episode, John chats with serial entrepreneur, author, and former member of the U.S. Navy, Ken Falke. Ken's passion for taking care of his fellow combat veterans and their family members led him to his current role as the chairman and founder of Boulder Crest, an organization that focuses on the teachings of post-traumatic growth. Ken spends the majority of his time educating the public and private sectors on the issues surrounding the long-term care of our returning military personnel and their families. In today's world, it's more important than ever to help ourselves and those around us address mental wellness. In this episode, you'll learn about Ken's highly successful military career, how he leveraged that into building multiple businesses, why he got into helping veterans deal with PTSD, why he wrote Struggle Well, Thriving in the Aftermath of Trauma, and learn the mental wellness model that can be applied to everyone. Now here's your host, the Chief Revolution Officer of the DiJulius Group, John DiJulius.
Welcome to the Customer Service Revolution podcast, where this is podcast number 37, and I'm so excited about the guest we have today, Mr. Ken Falke, who is a 21-year veteran of the U.S. Navy, explosive ordnance disposal, EOD. He's a retired Master Chief Petty Officer. He is highly respected around the world as an innovative and forward-thinking thought leader on the subjects of counterterrorism, military training, innovative technology development, wounded warrior care, and military to veteran transition. And Ken is a serial entrepreneur. He's started 4 businesses, and there's just so much to go into. Welcome, Ken. Where does this find you today?
Hey, John, I'm home here in Virginia in the middle of a snowstorm and ice storm. So glad to be here with you today.
So glad to be with you. So, Ken, tell us a little bit about your journey, background military. How'd you get into that?
Yeah. Well, my family, John, is from Chicago and Pittsburgh. My dad got out of the Army in 1961, I think, and moved to D.C. to become a policeman. And my mom and I moved down from Pittsburgh in 63 and grew up here in the kind of D.C. metro area. I had a dream. My mom died when I was a young boy. I was 7 and she was 29 years old. And I spent a lot of my summers with my grandparents up north and became quite a good hockey player and had this dream of playing professional hockey. Unfortunately, I was a terrible student in school. So the colleges that I wanted to play hockey at weren't looking at me. So I thought maybe I'd take a run at the pros, without going through the college route. So I left home, went to Fort Worth, Texas, tried out for a team called the Fort Worth Texans. They were the farm team, the minor league team for the Colorado Rockies at the time. And it didn't work out. I spent a year in Texas working in an ice rink and around youth and adult hockey programs. It was not a great life. I was making $800 a month. I was drinking.
So you're like, 19, 20 right now at this time?
18. I left home in 80. I graduated from high school in 80. So I was 18. I joined the Navy at 19. So it was kind of my 18th year of life. And drinking too much, partying too much, all the things you do as a dumb 18-year-old. And long story short, I had grown, like I said, I grew up here in D.C. in a very military neighborhood. All of our neighbors were military families. And a lot of my young mentors, my scoutmasters, my bosses were all military men. And I just always saw something positive in that lifestyle. And went down to the recruiting station and raised my right hand and joined the Navy.
Wow. And you had an amazing career. What was it? Maturity just clicked. You found your purpose. Your background doesn't say you're going to have an amazing career in the military, right? Up until then.
No, and I don't think anybody's does. The military is an amazing profession. You know, we take people in off the streets that we know very little to nothing about, and we make them into some remarkable humans: soldiers, sailors, airmen, Marines, Coast Guardmen. And the Navy did that for me, and I had a great career of it. I spent my first 2 years, or roughly 18 months, in the Navy Ceremonial Guard, which is the honor guard that does the Arlington cemetery funerals and White House ceremonies, those types of things. And it was a really interesting time of my life, and I enjoyed it, but it wasn't what I really wanted. You know, you can't stay in that for your whole career. It wasn't really what I wanted to do. And I always wanted to be a diver. That was something, you know, I grew up watching all the great diving shows, Jacques Cousteau and Mike Nelson on Sea Hunt, and all those types of things. So I had this idea about being a frogman. I actually enlisted in the Navy to be a SEAL, and prior to getting to the Ceremonial Guard, I'd failed the eye test. But after the Ceremonial Guard, I had made contact. In the Navy, there's 3 diving, if you will, communities. There's the Navy SEALs, there's Navy EOD, and then there's the Navy diving and salvage community. And I really wanted the EOD work because it was a lot like the stuff that I thought frogmen did, diving underwater and blowing up mines and all those types of things, which sounded exciting to me. And that's what I did. I went down and tested and was recruited into the program, and the rest of my career was history. I went from an E1, which is the entry level rank that you can enlist in the military, to an E9, which is the senior enlisted rank, Master Chief Petty Officer in the Navy. And I did that in a pretty short period of time, about 18 years, and then spent the last 3 years as a Master Chief. And I kept thinking to myself, you know, there's no more promotions ahead. You know, what do I do for the next 7 or 8 years? And by then, you know, I thought maybe I'll just get out and go to work for somebody else. And one thing led to another, and I started my own business.
And the first business was ATI Solutions. What year did you start that?
AT Solutions was started
AT Solutions.
March of 2002. Matter of fact, we were incorporated on my birthday, March 26, 2002, by the Virginia State, you know, Commission. And we sold the company, you know, ran a great company, which we can talk about.
Yeah.
We sold it. We grew it and sold it in 2008, just 6 years, created a lot of value and sold it. So
you only had it for 6 years. Wow. So that's where we meet. And before I tell people what AT Solutions did, I'll tell you how, you know, our evolution to our audience. So somewhere, you know, I don't remember, maybe 2003, 2004, you call me up and, you know, you say, you know, you heard about me, I think through your brother, and you say, you know, you run AT Solutions. And so I'm assuming it's a technology company. I'm assuming it's whatever. And when I asked you what you do, and you responded with, you know, anti-terrorism training, combating the war on terrorism. And I thought you dialed the wrong number. And correct me if I'm wrong, a great deal of your work came from your business, your customer was government contracts, which is usually, you know, sold or purchased to the lowest bidder. So, you know, and I got to believe my listeners are thinking, all right, what is Ken Falke? What does any of this have to do with the customer service revolution? So, you know, that's where our journey starts. And it was so incredible. So let's go back and explain what AT Solutions did. You know, we'll go from there.
Yeah. Well, let's start with the customer service side of it. When I started the company, John, I didn't know a lot about running a business. I grew up in a family of entrepreneurs. I did have a grandfather in Pittsburgh who ran a fairly successful trucking business. My dad after my mom died and he left the police department, ran a pretty successful construction business. My brother took that over. So I had some access to entrepreneurs and to some knowledge, but I wasn't that knowledgeable. But I remember we started the company. I was still in San Diego, where I retired from the Navy. And by the time I got to Virginia, where we headquartered the company, it was in June. And I remember sitting in my dad's backyard. My dad's next door neighbor was an executive at Raytheon, one of the largest defense contractors, and not just an executive, a very high level executive. And my dad and him and I were sitting in my dad's backyard. It was probably middle of June 2002. And we were having a beer, looking out over the river. My parents had a beautiful house on the river. We're looking out over the river and we're talking. And I'm asking this guy at Raytheon, what's the secret, the business? And he patted me on the back. I'll never forget him. He said, Kenny, let me tell you the secret to business. He said, people got to like you. People got to like you. And you got to do good work. He said, and if you can get 2 of the 3 of those down, you're golden. And my dad used to call it the circle of like. But his message was, which I kind of saw in defense contracting, as you mentioned, the lowest bidder kind of model, is that you don't have to do good work, right? If people like you or they like your pricing, a lot of these bids were being won, and I was blown away by it. And then I was talking to my brother about it one day, and both my brother and I grew up in the world of YPO, Young Presidents Organization, and my brother had been to a YPO event with you as a speaker, I think.
Yes,
and I was talking to my brother about the quality of service that the government was getting from these contractors. I said, I got to do better than that if we're going to be successful. And he said, I just saw the best guy. Anyway, he turned me on to you, and I read your first book. Gave you a call, and I think the rest was history.
And it's been so exciting. So I remember going in, and you had me come in, and I don't know, you had a team of 30 or 40 and do this presentation, and we stay in touch. And then you call me up. It seems like less than 12 months later, and said, John, we need you back. I said, okay, what do you want to work on next? And you said, I want the exact same presentation. I'm like, Ken, I just did that. He goes, John, we have 300. You said, John, we have 300 employees today. And your growth was just mind boggling, but it was so cool. Your vision and your commitment to building an experience in training and consulting services for counterterrorism industry was just amazing. And as you said, you sold it in 2008. And because of our relationships, and people got to like you and you got to do good work, as you pointed out, you had introduced me to so many great other brands in the government, DC, and then New Day USA, which has been, one of our best clients for years. And we've had you speak at the Customer Service Revolution. But then you now have built 2 for-profit businesses. So now you turn into, you build 2 nonprofit businesses. So let's talk about that.
Yeah, well, I definitely don't want to miss out on the one story about meeting you. We had the first time you came and spoke to us, we had it was basically our management team. I think there was 25 or 30 gals there, and I had put on the agenda Secret Service.
Yeah. Which was the name of my first book.
The name of your first book.
Yes.
And I think everybody thought at the time we were doing a lot of work overseas. We were doing a lot of work with the new Department of Homeland Security at the time, with the State Department, some really interesting customers in the counterterrorism business. And I just knew we could do better. My goal was to take that circle of like and have people like us and to do great work. And that was really where we were focused. But the customer service aspect of it was still missing. And then I remember when you came in, and it was funny. The guys were looking. These guys were knuckle draggers, right? They were the best of the best from Delta Force and SEAL Team 6 and all the greatest military strength, got retired guys that I could get my hands on. And 2 of the guys in the audience were British Special Forces guys. I don't know if you remember them or not. A week after you left, I don't know if I ever told you this, I walked by our conference room and there was a big meeting being held, and there were all these coffee cups on the table, and they had our logo on one side and the names of people that I didn't recognize on the other, which were the names of the people who were coming to this meeting. And it was being held by one of these British Special Forces guys. And as I turned the corner, he was there, and I said, "Oh, what's going on in the conference room?" He goes, hey mate, I got a meeting this morning, and that hairdresser that came and talked to us last week, that hairdresser, he changed my mind. I know how to do this now. I've got it down. And I thought, well, if we can change his mind and put him into a more customer-focused attitude, we can do it to anybody. And it really did change the way we did business. And
it changed mine. Sadly, that was my first experience in the military or dealing with former military, and because of our relationship and continue to work with you in your ventures today and your introductions from New Day, who serves veterans, and other government departments. God, I'm just so blessed and feel guilty for not doing more for the military. And I'll tell you a funny story. Through one of the introductions from you, I'm working with a company, and I'm out to dinner, like we usually do after a conference, and we're sitting there, and one of our mutual friends this was the first time, he and his brother, and I want to be able to say this right, they were trained assassins. What is the correct terminology in the military? Is that it?
No, we wouldn't call anybody in the States.
Right. Yeah, that's
they're special forces guys, right?
All right, special forces. And so I'm sitting there not knowing this, and someone at dinner says to him, he says, Joe Schmo, you were really good at special forces, right? Knocking people off that you needed to get to. And the person he asked says, yeah, I was pretty good, but I got to tell you, my brother was the best. And I'm listening to this story thinking, I'm not in Kansas anymore, right? I mean, like this is a whole new world for me. And it was crazy. But anyway, I think even better than your amazing military career, that you took ATI in just 6 years, 4 consecutive years to, annual Inc. 500 fastest growing privately held companies, and just a whole list of other awards and impact. I really think your legacy is about what you're doing today and what you've done since AT Solutions. Let's go there. Let's talk about Boulder Crest and the amazing work that you and your teams are doing.
Yeah. So we sold the company in 2008. I stuck with it for 2 more years as CEO, and then I left. We put a new CEO in place, and I left. And early in the war, if I back up a little bit, way back in 2004, through AT Solutions initially, we actually had a wounded warrior care employee who worked for us. And anytime a severely wounded bomb disposal personnel, regardless of the service, Army, Navy, Air Force, or Marines, she would go to the hospital and visit with the families, and we would give money to the families to help them with hotel rooms and rental cars and meals and all those types of things. These were mostly amputees, men and women who had been severely physically injured on the battlefield. Not just amputees. We had a couple guys that had been paralyzed, a couple guys that were blinded, those types of injuries where their lives were completely changed after the injury. When we sold the company, we turned that business into a nonprofit called the Wounded EOD Warrior Foundation. And that foundation is still going today. We did drop the word wounded because we do work with a lot of people now who don't see themselves as wounded or physically wounded, specifically with these invisible injuries of war. I left that organization also last June because, like most nonprofits, the board positions have terms. And I termed out in June and turned that over to a new board chairman. But over the years, we raised $15 million and gave the majority of that away, about 10 million of that away, to help the families of wounded EOD troops, provide scholarships to some of their children, some of the children of guys and gals who were killed in action, those types of things. And it was really through the work with those families. My wife and I live an hour west of Washington, D.C., and most of the amputees injured in Iraq and Afghanistan were getting medevaced back here to the Washington, D.C. hospitals, at the time, Walter Reed and Bethesda. And we would go visit their families. And, you can imagine the parents are our age. Most of these young men and women that were being injured were very young, 24, 25 years old. And we started bringing their families out to our house, our home. We had a big estate, 200-acre farm, an old 100-year-old farmhouse, a couple small guest house on the property. And we used to have the families come out for barbecues, weekend stays, sometimes during the week, just to get away from the hospital environment. And one thing led to another. And like I said, we had 200 acres. The majority of our property was a hardwood mountain. But at the bottom of our property, the piece of property furthest away from our house was 37 acres of pasture land. And my wife and a couple of her friends had come up with this idea that rather than having these guests in our house, maybe we should build some like homes away from home so they could really get out and really put their feet up. Because, getting people into your house, no matter what you say to them, help yourself to the refrigerator, whatever, you always feel like a guest. And we knew that. And they really needed more than just us being there. And quite frankly, on us, it was tiring too. Every weekend we had families there and we were waiting hand and foot on families, and we didn't want to run a bed and breakfast either. So that, it worked out well for both parties. So we donated 37 acres. We put up the first $1 million. We went out and raised $9 million more, and we built the nation's first privately funded wellness center for combat veterans. And today we see first responders as well. And that's called Boulder Crest Foundation. And it's been running, we've been open since September of 2013. About 3 years into the venture, our biggest donor, the Clark family here in Washington, D.C., Mr. Clark had passed away, and they gave us a $10 million gift to buy and open a second facility out in Arizona. And we've been running that one since 2017. So Boulder Crest Foundation really consists of three entities, Boulder Crest, Virginia, Arizona, and then we have something else called the Boulder Crest Institute for Posttraumatic Growth, which is where we kind of do all of our, if you will, research and development efforts. So it's great. It's so great to be in a position where we can give back, to those that I served with and their families, and really change the way people look at mental health. And that's really what we're focused on as an organization. Although we still do get a lot of physically wounded troops here that stay in these beautiful cabins and stay in our beautiful facility in Arizona, our primary mission is really helping people overcome the last 20 years of war. This country's been at war for the longest period of time in our nation's history. This year, this September 11th, it'll be 20 years that we've been fighting in Afghanistan and Iraq and other places around the world. And it's taken a toll on this generation. We saw it with the Vietnam. I saw it personally, close up with the Vietnam generation coming home. Invisible injuries, post-traumatic stress, traumatic brain injuries don't get better with age. I always tell people they're contagious in the family. If somebody's suffering, the whole family suffers. So what we're trying to do is really revolutionize the way mental health care is provided in this country.
And I've seen it, fortunately, several times firsthand at both properties, Arizona, which I couldn't even tell you how to get there, and cell phones don't work. But man, are those, I've stayed at those cabins, and they're beautiful. And the property is immense, and it's farms, and and you guys got all things. You got bears out there in Arizona that you got to be careful about. But not only is it, how you're treating them, and it's world class. You're in everything you do. You're so committed to building a world class experience besides helping them mentally, which obviously is part of it. But I also love what you're doing for the employees, and they're former military. And just my experiences working with them and hearing their stories. And again, it goes back to, if you haven't been served, I live in a bubble, and what they experience and the stories I hear and the stories they hear every day is stuff that I only see in movies that I think is embellished, right? Just for Hollywood. And it's not. It's amazing. I love what your employees, the purpose, and they're just so bought in to having an impact, which obviously when you're having an impact, you're having an impact on yourself too. And so I just love what Boulder Crest is about, your commitment to just changing lives, which the ripple effect that, as you say, it's going to have a ripple effect on their spouse, their children, everyone they come in contact with, and they deserve what Boulder Crest does. So then I think it's been 3 or 4 years since your book came out. How long's it been?
Yeah, Struggle Well. The program we run at Boulder Crest is called Warrior Path. And we get asked a lot because we've had some great publicity on it. We get asked a lot if the programs that we run for military and veterans and first responders would work for civilians. And we thought, well, we'll try it. We've had a couple professional athletes come through our program. We've had a couple civilians come through our program, and it works equally as well. And we thought, well, how can we share that word in a broader audience? And that's what we did. We wrote the book, Struggle Well. The book, although it's co-authored by me and Josh Goldberg, the book is really, the premise of the book is really the philosophy of what we do in our Warrior Path program. And then mixed in there is some of my personal life story and some of Josh's personal life story, which are completely opposite, right? I grew up in the military. I suffered some military trauma, to include a severe parachuting accident. Josh self-proclaims himself as the indoor Jew that grew up in Dallas. His dad's a doctor, his mom's a teacher. His goal in life was not to find struggle and not to
get his fingernails dirty.
Not to get his fingernails dirty. And then all of a sudden his life came crashing down on him, and things changed. So, that's what we wrote the book about, to tell no matter what happens, the military by far isn't the only organization that sees traumatic events. I had a friend of mine who is a in the financial business on Wall Street, was in a taxi cab in New York City, was T-boned, and the driver lost his head. And the driver's head ended up in the back seat with her. And she sat there for 30 minutes until the fire department cut her out. So, trauma is not, owned by the military by any means. Our first responders on a daily basis see death and destruction on the highways and fires in homes. And there's a lot of trauma in this nation. And it's not, something that we can't all get through, and especially together. I always tell people, our programs are based on the science of something called posttraumatic growth. At the highest level, that means kind of what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. And to the naysayers out there on post-traumatic growth, I just tell them that, we'd be extinct with the dinosaurs as a race if we didn't understand this. And you can, in fact, grow from trauma if you do the right things. And that's really what our book, Struggle Well, talks about in the military sense. And I know you know him, John, Charlie Plum.
Oh, yeah. You actually introduced Charlie at our conference a few years ago.
Right. So Captain Charlie Plum, who spent 6 years in prison camps in Vietnam, tortured, beaten, starved. You meet the guy today, you'd never know he went through any trauma.
Most positive person you'll ever meet. It's incredible. And I think I'm having a bad day because I have to, maybe get a new tire, right? And this guy lived from 23 to age 30, the best years of our life, right? In an 8x8 cell.
Crazy.
So Struggle Well is a fantastic book, and Josh is, equally amazing. I've read it. I've given it out to people, and it is, to your point, you don't have to have served. We all, if we live long enough, and some it comes sooner than others, have tragedy and setbacks. And the recipe is the same for anyone. And I give it out to people that have never served, but they're overcoming a loss of a spouse, a sudden, or loss of a child. And it doesn't matter. So it's a great book. We're going to put the link into it in the show notes.
Are you passionate about helping others succeed? So are our customer experience coaches. Find out how you can join them by contacting Claudia at DiJuliusGroup.com.
Let's talk about that. Trauma doesn't discriminate. the highest cause of anxiety is uncertainty. And today it's all about uncertainty. And so how do business leaders, how do parents, how does anyone deal with this so it doesn't, overwhelm them, so it doesn't cause PTSD, or we can reduce it? Because, I got 150 employees, and that is something that I worry about, where they're at and how they're doing. And I don't know if I'm doing the right thing. Take us there with your background research. How do we transfer this to businesses today, and business leaders and parents?
Yeah, no, I mean, I think it's a great question. And we've done a lot. When COVID hit last February, early March, I looked at our staff and I said, this is going to be rough. And we teach the science of post-traumatic growth. Let's do it. We live it. But let's look at ourselves, right? So what post-traumatic growth suggests is that when trauma and dilemmas occur in your life, that you take the time and the opportunity to understand why. And really, these are the deep questions. And one of my favorite books is a book by Viktor Frankl, who was a Holocaust survivor, called Man's Search for Meaning. And Frankl talks about, how important the question why is versus why me. Why me kind of takes you down that victim road, whereas why and understanding why allows us to maybe to take that opportunity to think about it and to create a plan to come out of it in a better way. Because what we want to do is thrive after trauma. We want to learn from these experiences and become a better version of ourselves, not a reduced version or diminished version. And that's what I always believe traditional mental health care does to us, is that the talk therapy and the medications allow us to kind of get on with life, to bear it, to live a diminished version of what you can live. I broke my back in 1989 in a parachute jump. Initially told I would never walk, then told my military career was over. I went on to have a very successful career. 9 months after my accident, I ran the best PT test of my military career, physical training test. But
Did you jump again?
And that was my 5th jump in the Navy. I made 1,000 jumps after that.
I know that.
So, life's all about perspective. And that's what we try to do in the book, Struggle Well. And that's what I try to recommend. So we did a lot. We've done a lot with hospitals and frontline healthcare workers and first responders during this pandemic on teaching this Struggle Well philosophy. But if I can go through it really quick for you,
yes, please,
for your audience. I'll tell you this: our wellness model is based upon 4 elements. Think of it in this geometric shape. It's a triangle with a circle in the middle that in an ideal world touches all 3 sides of the triangle. At the top point of the triangle is our mind. And a strong mind provides you with the ability to concentrate, to be creative, to learn new concepts, but most importantly, to increase our wisdom, because that's really what life is about. Creating a perspective in your life and then getting as smart about life as you can, right? We don't want to be conspiracy theorists and, all the stuff that's not done because small snippets of information are available to you on social media, and now you think you're an expert. But if you really want to increase your wisdom, you've got to learn, you've got to read, you've got to do a much deeper dive than that. And that's what creates a strong mind. Obviously, if you don't have that, your mind gets weakened. How do you create a strong mind during these times? We tell people to take breaks from their social media, from TV, focus on reading, be careful in proliferating, being a part of the misinformation campaigns. I saw a friend of mine this morning posted something on Facebook that's just not true about student debt. We saw President Biden yesterday say that he wasn't going to pay off $50,000 in student debt, but that was misinformation on Facebook, and it's being proliferated now. You're part of the problem if you do that. And when you become part of the problem, that problem doesn't just affect others, it affects you as well. We teach meditation techniques. We teach a variety of them, but if you can meditate a couple times a day, if you're religious, you can find time to pray a couple times a day. That is really important. Staying connected with people that you love. We call it your 3 to 5. We believe that as humans, we become the average of the 3 to 5 people we spend the most time with. So really getting getting connected. And really, the last thing for a strong mind that I'll talk about is sleep. Good sleep. To have a good, strong mind and body, you need at least 8 hours of sleep a night. And I know I get by with about 6.5 or 7, but at the end of the day, 8 is the right number. If you can get 8 hours of sleep, it does you good. On the bottom left side of the triangle is our body. At the highest level here is, the difference between being fat and fit. And when I say fit, I don't mean that you have to be an NFL athlete or a track star. But I mean that you can bend down and tie your shoes. My doctor said to me one time, the secret in life isn't how much you can bench press. It's that by the time you're 80 years old, that you can bend over and tie your own shoes. And taking those things into account, when we talk about a strong body, we talk about exercise, nutrition, hydration. Those are the things that, and flexibility, the things that really allow us to do that. So doing something in COVID, getting out. If you're a boss and you're working with employees, encourage them to get out and take a stretch and a walk, and be careful on bringing in pizzas every day for lunch. Don't let your employees overeat. Drinking lots of water, minimizing junk food, all of those types of things. And then with COVID, obviously, is making sure we're doing the right things by washing our hands, getting the vaccine, and wearing masks. So those are the real important things that I think keep a healthy body. On the bottom right side of the triangle is our finances. If you look at most wellness centers, they focus on mind, body, and spirit. We added finances because we saw a lot in our military population, especially with the younger military population, that people were having some real financial challenges. But it's not just in the military. I mean, the minimum wage is $7. Many of the people, and I know, John, even in your business, don't make large salaries, right? They rely on tips and their success to get through. And life's expensive in this country. And thank God it's not as expensive as some countries, but it's expensive. So, getting your finances in order. My dad used to say at the highest level, again, don't spend more than you make. But it's not that easy. Credit cards are proliferating, online lines of credit, so you can overdraft your checking account. All that stuff's available. But, really set a budget and be careful and try to get some savings. At some stage in the game, and, I'm approaching 60 years old now, at some stage in the game, you're not able to work anymore. And if you're not able to work, you're going to have to rely on some sort of a retirement plan. And, I'm not even 100% sure Social Security will be around for all of us when we're 80, So you got to do a lot of saving and make sure that you've got a plan for what the future is going to bring. And then finally, in the center of the triangle is our spirituality. In a very non-religious sense, we define spirituality in 3 ways. The first is your character. Are you really the man or the woman that you say you are? Or are you living 2 lives? We call that congruency, that your thoughts, your feelings, and your actions are aligned. The strength of your relationship, specifically with that 3 to 5, the people that you really love and that really lift you up, right? These people that are their social media friends that don't lift you up. There's nothing good that come out of those types of relationships. And then third, John, which I know you and your team do in spades, is service to others. What are you doing for somebody other than yourself? Because that in itself can really change your mindset. And you don't have to do something big. You don't have to start a nonprofit like you've done or like I've done. Going down to the local food banks and helping stock the shelves. I mean, there's small acts of kindness that we can do for each other and do for others. That's really, really important. So that's our 4 areas of wellness. And I think, sitting down during these times as a CEO, as a boss, of a business or a business unit with your people and checking them. When we run our program, Warrior Path, we ask people to measure themselves in those 4 categories on a scale of 1 to 5, 1 being the lowest, 5 being the highest. And then if you're a great leader, remember my definition of leadership is helping people get to a place that they can't get to on their own. So if we call ourselves leaders, then our job is to help them get there. And if they're a 1 in finances, how can we help them set their goals so they're getting to a 2 or a 3 or 4, hopefully a 5. And it's nobody in this world is a 5 all around. But, if we're working towards that,
On Facebook, we're a 5 all around.
Yeah. Yeah. The fake world of Facebook, but it's really, it's really an opportunity to measure yourself, share that information, with your partners and your 3 to 5 and your employees, and then to be open and honest. If you're the boss, share your wellness triangle and see what other people in that room might be able to do to help you, and reciprocate with that. And I think that's important. Last April, a month and a half into the pandemic, Axios released a statistic that 70% of employers had not even checked on their employees' well-being. Now, I hope by then, a year later, I hope we've done a lot better, but it's important. If you want to keep employees, it's important to treat them well.
And there's a misnomer that checking in means we had a meeting today, right? That's not checking in. Because in that meeting, we got to cover these 10 bullet points and chop. We only have 3 more minutes left. Let's go. That's not checking in. We have to replicate the cubicle conversations, the Keurig conversations, where in the past, I'd walk up and see you, getting coffee, and we'd make some small talk and find out that it's you and Julie's anniversary, or you're struggling with a client, and I'm like, oh, Ken, I've done that 3 times. I could help you with that. You don't have to reinvent the wheel. Or I'm so sorry to hear about your aunt, or whatever that is. And just by I've had 3 meetings with Ken this month. That doesn't mean I checked in with Ken. And so we have to allow for that innocuous conversations that would naturally happen if we were in the same building together.
That's right. We do at Boulder Crest, which is now the only organization that I'm involved in. We do 3 meetings a month. I do every other week. I do a leadership meeting with my immediate leadership team, and then once a month we do an all hands call over Zoom, and we do this wellness triangle check-in with every single employee. Now, we've only got 33 employees. It's a little bit easier, but, if you've got a leadership team of 10 or 12 and they can do it with their employees, you can surely.
This wellness triangle is phenomenal. Every leader needs to teach. It needs to teach to our kids. And it's the right thing to do, but also when an employee sees that you're doing this, it's not about a hidden agenda of, how much money am I bringing in the business? You're really caring that I'm a better spouse, parent, healthier in all these ways. And I love this, and I'm going to include this in the show notes. And it's everything you teach in your book, Struggle Well. This is phenomenal. I love this, Ken. And something to your point, I believe spectating is the new cancer. And spectating is, overdoing binge watching, the reality TV shows, social media. Yeah, I'm guilty of it. And all those things are good in moderation and entertainment. But when you're watching other people's lives and that's your life versus getting out, going for a walk, going for a run, learning all the things in your wellness model, is so critical versus just getting absorbed and getting caught up in, social media, which is all it is a trafficking of misinformation and, the conspiracy theories, like you said, and woe is me and, all the stuff that we can't control and it's misinformation. So I love this. Let's talk about something that's really exciting that you just partnered with actor Gary Sinise. Who, if you're not familiar, he's a famous actor, Lieutenant Dan. He played that part in Forrest Gump. He's played in so many roles, CSI and Apollo 13. Tell us about the partnership you're doing with Gary Sinise, who, since I found out about this, I had no idea what he's doing for military. I think it kind of came off his first role, or his first major role, from playing Lieutenant Dan in Forrest Gump.
Well, Gary's an amazing guy. We've been friends now, I guess for over 7 years this year. I think that we've been friends, and he's done a lot. I mean, since his role as Lieutenant Dan, he got involved with a lot of Vietnam veterans, and 40 years, I think he's been doing great stuff for the disabled veteran community. But during this war, he really stepped up. He's done some amazing stuff. One of the things that he's most famous for is building what are referred to as smart homes for families who have a catastrophically injured military veteran. And some beautiful homes, guys that can't get out of wheelchairs, where the bottoms of the kitchen cabinets remotely come down and they can grab their own glass and they don't have to get waited on. And the showers are designed perfectly for them. And, just an amazing amount of work. But Gary's primary mission in life has always been to uplift the spirits of people that are suffering with traumatic events. And one thing that he's been doing, we've had a partnership with Gary and the Disabled American Veterans Organization for 6 years here at Boulder Crest, delivering our Warrior Path program to their personnel. And Gary said, we really have to do more in the way of invisible injuries, because these invisible injuries are getting bad. 125 to 130, we're not exactly sure of the number, John, Americans take their own lives every day. And about 22 of those are veterans. And in the first responder community that we serve, more first responders last year took their own lives than were killed in the line of duty. So our goal is to change that. And I just don't see doing the same thing that we've been doing for the last 20 years, 30 years, traditional mental health therapy working. So what we're hoping to do is transform the way this is being done. So we launched something called the Gary Sinise Foundation Avalon Network. And Avalon was the place where King Arthur went in Arthurian legend to heal his wounds after combat and then to lead his people back into the golden ages. And our message at Boulder Crest is simply this to combat veterans, is to come home from war and be the productive members here that they were in society. Right? We don't want veterans to be known as guys that are busting windows in the Capitol, becoming conspiracy theory. The military teaches us much better than that. And that's what we hope that we as an organization can do for people, is to help them become great citizens and better people in this nation, and not to become victims of the system, but to become people that can enable the country to be in a better place. And what we're going to do is Boulder Crest is going to take our Warrior Path program with the help of the Gary Sinise Foundation and scale that out to 10 other sites around the nation. And then there's another big organization that specializes in traumatic brain injury called the Marcus Institute for Brain Health, which is at the University of Colorado in Denver. And we're going to scale the brain injury centers out to 10 more or 9 more academic medical centers. So we're partnering with universities that have great neurology departments to traumatic brain injury care to a much higher level. And then on the nonprofit side, we're partnering with small nonprofits that know how to deliver retreat-based programs so that they can deliver our Warrior Path program and transform the veteran population that's in their areas. So that's it. I mean, it's exciting. We made the announcement this week. Gary.
And I'm going to include Gary Sinise's video where he announces this in the show notes. Watching that video, while I was, so thrilled, I had no idea, and I have so much more respect for Gary. I just, thought he was an actor, right? And what you and he say, like already, Ken Falke and Gary Sinise, you do so much, but you say we're not doing enough. I mean, that's extraordinary, and that's just a purpose and a calling that everyone is so thankful for. Ken, I can't thank you enough. You've been a great client. You've been a great friend. You've introduced me to so many people in a world that I just, kind of guilty, had my head in the sand, and it's exposed me. I'm so proud of being able to work with your, Boulder Crest, and I get so much more out of it than I ever could give back to you. I thank you for the service that you've done for our country and the service that you continue to do. I could go on longer, but you are truly an inspiration to me in so many ways, and I can't thank you enough.
John, the feeling is mutual. I think, I was going to say a little while back when you were describing our facilities, this place is 5-star. I've learned a lot from you when it comes to customer service and making people's experiences the best that they can be. And that's a big part of care, right? I mean, if you walk into a doctor's office or a therapist's office and you get treated like crap, you're not going back, and the dropout rates in traditional mental health care is horrific. And part of it's because the customer service is so bad. So I think tying it back into what you've taught me since we worked at AT Solutions together, has really allowed us to grow these 2 beautiful 5-star facilities. I mean, people are jealous of what we have here. Just in the bigger picture of things, they're jealous of it. But
no, it is one of these things that if you haven't been there, I'd want to go on vacation there. Right. Like, it is not what anyone could ever imagine. It is beautiful from the way you're treated, to the cabins you stay in, to the experience, to the property. You've made it world class in every possible dimension.
Thank you. And thank you for that. And we're excited to keep going.
Okay. Well, I want to thank everyone for another incredible podcast number 37 with our friend Ken Falke. And we will see you next time on the Customer Service Revolution podcast.
We hope you enjoyed this week's episode. Let us know how we're doing, and be sure to subscribe to and review the Customer Service Revolution podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, Spotify, or your favorite podcast app.